So now we have our CAN model. What we want to do before we start to animate is think about some attributes like strength, defense, dexterity, the intelligence of our characters, and the health. And what we would do is we don't want to think about it just for this CAN, but we want to think about it for all characters within our game. So I'm going to jump back into Unity, and I want to create a folder in the scripts folder just called character, and it's going to pertain to scripts that are for all of our characters. And then within that, we'll create a sub character called hero and NPCs and all that. But for now, in the scripts folder, I'm going to right click in here and create another folder and just call it characters. And in this folder, I'm going to right click and create a C# script, and I'm going to call it base character and hit enter. And I'm just going to go ahead and open up that script inside of Visual Studios by double clicking it. And I'm going to delete all of this stuff in here. So all I have is public class base character and then these things. And then I'm going to delete this mono behavior here. So essentially what I'm going to do is create a template that I think all of the characters will have. So these are just things that, for example, I know a character will need a name. So I would also like it to have a description and strength. And so what these things are going to be stored in is something called a variable. So for now, just like in algebra, think of a variable as a temporary storage place. So it's just like an empty cup, and they can store different things. So like I mentioned before, we can make it public by and accessible to our editor by using the word public. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. So for right now, we want to do a letter or sentence or a word. So this is more than one character or letter. And the way you do that is we say string, and I'm just going to write the word name in semicolon. Now, a lot of times when you, for those of you who are familiar with scripting, there's different types of conventions. And since this is going to be made public, what we do is public variables. This is sort of a newer C# convention. We make public variables with a capital. So I'm going to save this, and I want to show you something really quick. So here is our base character class. I'm just going to make a empty game object, and I'm going to drag this on top of here. Can't add script. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not a mono behavior. So don't. We'll get back to this example later. But for now, just what we're going to do is name this public here. Actually, you know what? Let me copy this. I'm going to undo this a little bit and bring back my mono behavior just so you can see this. So I'm going to write string name here. And you don't necessarily have to bring this back. I'm going to delete this in a second. And let's bring back that empty game object. So create empty. I'm going to drag this on top. Notice that it shows that we have a script attached. But if I go in here and I type the word public, I'm going to hit save. Watch what happens in here once Unity compiles. Notice that it created an empty, or it created a public element that we can edit in our inspector. So we can name it Cano for our main character or whatever we want. And these are just words or letters because what we have here is a string. Now I'm going to delete this, and I'm also going to delete this game object from my scene. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Because it's not a mono behavior, we're actually going to access this script or use it as a base for all of our characters. So we have a public string name and a shortcut. And if you're new to coding, you should just type this out for practice. But I'm going to hit Control and D to duplicate this line. And I want another place where we can save our description. And what I want to do next is a bunch of public floats. And a float is just a decimal number, so like 1.0. And so what I'll do is I'll type public float strength semicolon. And I'm not sure why this is not lining up. There we go. And I'm going to hit Control D. maybe 5 more times. So 2, 3, 4. And I know I want a character, I want to adjust strength. I also want to have a defense of my character. Um, dexterity. Dexterity, you can think of it as how fast they are, their speed, their precision, things like that. So dexterity. Uh, Kind of like Fallout 4, I want to make certain pop cans intelligent, so intelligence. And so this base character script is going to be for all characters in our game. They're going to have these attributes. And I'm going to name this health. And that's really it for this script. And so what I want you to think about is these are just variables. So this variable name can only hold letters. This can only hold numbers. So a float is different than an integer. An integer is like 1, 2, 3, 4 whole numbers. Float is a float is like 1.5. So these are just decimal values, okay? So that's it for our base script. And what we're going to do is do some basic animations on our can next.